Good evening. I'd like to welcome you all and to you that are viewing tonight to a regular meeting of the Oak Harbor City Council, April 18th, 2017, and it is 6 p.m. We start off our meetings with an invocation followed by the Pledge of Allegiance, which I will lead. Tonight's invocation will be led by Drew Barnhart, lead pastor at Living Word. And please, we invite you to please stand and join us for the invocation.
Let's pray. God, we thank you for the privilege that you've given each of us to be a part of this great city. Thank you for each leader represented here that you've given authority and responsibility to. Lord, I ask that you'd grant us wisdom to leverage our authority for the good of your people. We thank you for our leaders, and we ask for your blessing on them as they gather tonight. In Jesus' name, amen.
Thank you, Drew. Please join me in the pledge. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
It looks like we've got a couple of counselors absent tonight, Tara Heisen and Erica Wassinger. Yes, Beth.
I move that Erica Wassinger and Tara Heisen, council members, please be excused for the meeting tonight.
Second.
Okay, motion to excuse both the counselors. Motion by Munn, second by Campbell. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Now to item number 1, approval of agenda. And I think maybe, yes, Councilor Allenberg.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to make a motion that we reverse the sequence of agenda number 7 and 10 to allow the presenter in number 10 to leave if they wish.
Second.
Okay, motion to change 10 to item number 7 tonight, and we'll follow that then with item 7. Motion by Allenberg, second by Servadius. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. We've got an agenda, and we are moving very quickly through to item number 3, citizen comment period. Citizens may comment on subjects of interest not listed on the agenda or items listed on the consent agenda. To ensure comments are recorded properly, please state your name clearly into the microphone. Please limit comments to 3 minutes. And I see that we have Therese Kingsbury tonight here. Has signed up. Therese?
Hello, I am Therese Kingsbury, the new Vice Chair of the Arts Commission. And I have a very brief statement that the Arts Commission has put together, written by Kit Christofferson, who is the new chair of the Arts Commission. And it's in regards to the Windjammer Park integration of art. And it's just, the Arts Commission would like to offer assistance with any artistic decisions and opportunities that may arise during the course of the Windjammer Park improvement. And this was brought to us at the end of the week, and we just had a meeting last Thursday, and they haven't had a lot of time to prepare anything except that they're excited to be involved.
Okay. Is that it?
Yep, that's it.
Okay, nice to see you, Therese. And John, welcome. Okay, anyone else? Citizen comment period. Okay. Going once, twice, okay. We'll move to item number 4, consent agenda. Any change to the consent agenda? If not, we'll approve it as presented. No change? Okay. We are to mayor's comments. Item number 5. Couple of things here. Well City, the city of Oak Harbor was awarded the 2017 Well City Award. Probably read about that in the paper, showcasing the city's commitment to employee health at City Hall. And that does earn a 2% premium discount on our 2018 medical premiums, which is in the high $30,000 premium discount. I think last time I saw that figure, that savings was about $38,000. So We have an extremely talented group of employees who are on our wellness committee helping us achieve this goal all year long. And many thanks to all on the wellness committee and all employees that participated. Thank you very much for that. It pays off, and we appreciate it. Wildcat Sailing Team, and if you didn't see them in Harbor, just what was it, a week ago, you missed a really a fun time watching them. I think there were, close to 30 boats, maybe even a few over. The sailing team earned its first trophy, taking second place. It's my understanding they missed first place by 1 point. They were 1 point shy from winning their first regatta at the Island Cup. There were 14 schools who participated, so way to go, Wildcat Sailing Team. They will be heading to two district champion events in Seattle for a chance to compete in the national championships in May. And then Rhonda and I attended the Whidbey Playhouse this last week, showing the 37 postcard play. Our very own city employee, Tally Boyer, in our accounting department, is in this pretty darn funny play. If you haven't seen it, I would recommend that you go watch her. Rhonda and I sat in the front row, and I thought when Tally first shuffled out, she was probably one of the younger people on the cast, but her part was to play the elder in the play, Nana. And Rhonda started laughing, and I thought we were going to have to move to the back row because that Tally handled it so well, though, and it was very entertaining. So nice job, Tally, and it's neat for the Playhouse. So having said that, I think that I am ready to turn it over to council. Anybody here, council, got any? Yes, Councilor Muntz.
I do actually have a couple of pictures. If you'll notice, this is the walk-on to Saturday's Mariners game, April 15th. And we had two from Oak Harbor represented there. The first picture, this is AM1 Ferguson. He was the top sailor of the year for NAS Whidbey Island. And the second one is Chief Warrant Officer 2, Tony Slowick. That's a picture with his family. But he was actually in the corner at home plate walking on. And that's quite exciting to have two from our own. Tony is also one of our finest of the Oak Harbor Police Department. So this is pretty exciting to have our town recognized, especially on Armed Forces Day. So the other thing is this year, 1977, is the 40-year anniversary of Help House and Island Thrift. If you all looked at your article of the Pulse from the hospital, they did a feature about the money we have given to them. But since 2000, Help House has given $4.5 million back to the community. So all your junk that you give away, trust me, we put that money to good use. So please keep giving so we can give to the community. And Help House has been helping families have food on their table for 40 years. So they're going to have special events in this summer.
Wow, congratulations.
Yeah.
Tell them special thanks from us.
And
Okay,
that's
anyone
it.
else? Other council? Okay. Seeing none, we'll move to the city administrator, Dr. Merriman.
Thank you, Mayor and City Council. I'll just go ahead and submit my report. You each have a copy of it up there, and I emailed it out earlier today for your review. A couple of highlights to talk about. First, I have a couple of different things where we owe some thanks to some people. First is we have a new person at the dais with us tonight. We have Stephanie Morris, who's sitting in for Nicole and handling our minutes tonight. So it's her first time here, so she's not nervous at all, but she'll do a great job for us tonight. Second, this last week, we had an incident that involved a lot of our staff with the PD and the fire department, as well as the school district and others. There was a lot of hours put in. It was a pretty complicated event to handle. But I just want to thank the police department and the fire department members who are involved with that. A lot of extra overtime and some long days put in there, and we really are appreciative of their time on that. As far as projects go, the Whidbey Island Marathon is this weekend. And right now we are at 1,858 people. Last year we were about 1,600 people. So we have a good bump up over last year. Primarily, if you look down in the lower right corner of that report, you'll see we're up over 1,000 people for the half marathon. That's a good, strong number for that event. So we're excited about that, and that'll be a good event this weekend. I think what I'll do is just go ahead and jump right to our next item here. We have Brett to give us an update on the wastewater treatment plant project.
Well, good evening. We're here for a clean water facility project update. We want to talk a little bit, go back to nostalgia. This is where we were in June of 2015, almost 2 years ago, and when we were just getting started, and the park looked so pristine, and we were just getting moving, and I was just starting to get to know the place. Right now, it's changed drastically. You see a lot of big holes out there, big piles of dirt over there on the left, and it's quite highly disturbed. We're still keeping the park operating, but we have big plans for it and hope to move forward with restoring it. The project itself is moving right along. Design, nothing really new to report there. We have the 30% design plans in review right now, and comments are going back to the consultants. Construction-wise, nothing really exciting this last 2 weeks. We've just been pouring concrete. We still may remain ahead of schedule and below labor estimates. The construction activities for GMPs number 9, number 11 are really starting to pick up. Number 9, of course, is mechanical, electrical, so we're starting to see a lot of mechanical equipment and electrical equipment showing up. One interesting thing we're talking about now is on the architectural side, which is GMP number 11, is we're starting to pick out the block for the above-ground structures. So if you look down there, our concrete is almost at grade, so most of the deep structures are coming out of the ground, and I think we're planning to have the decks completed in about 3-4 weeks. We've been doing utility relocations in the old Wells Fargo parking lot, and we've actually got most of the pipes and stuff in, so all the utilities are now coming out and doing their connections. So those will be completed at the end of this week, which is nice. It was kind of touch and go there last week. And we are going to be driving piles again. We are putting in H-piles and legging for the odor control unit. So unfortunately, we'll be doing that for about 3 weeks. So that'll be somewhat noisy. Our parking lot closure remains in effect. One thing we do have now is we've had the back access closed off because of construction, but now if you want to come visit us, you can park on the Pioneer, parking behind Pioneer Auto. We do have the lease back there, and walk in the south entrance again. We have access from the west side now. So if people want to come visit, they don't have to ring the door anymore. Funding-wise, there's nothing new on there. I don't think the legislature is finished doing their approvals, and we're waiting on pins and needles for that one, and go from there. Major decisions coming up is tonight we have Resolution 1708, accepting the 30% Windjammer design. Schedule-wise, we just updated our schedule, we call Oak Harbor 29, which is our 29th schedule since we started. Pretty much on schedule. We're right now the mechanical, electrical are starting to jump into the critical path. We're keeping way ahead on the concrete, so that's actually a very good sign. For public outreach, you can always reach us at oakharborcleanwater.org and call us at 914-7000 or our work extensions. Contact us at treatment plant at oakharbor.org, and our next open house or next meeting is April 24th. Any questions?
Any questions? Okay. Thank you. Nice report, Brett. Dr. Merriman,
That's the end of my report.
Okay. We are now on to item number 6 under public hearings and meetings. If you do wish to speak during a scheduled public hearing or meeting, please sign in. But even if you didn't, you'll get an opportunity. Again, we'd like you to keep any comments. We'd like you to state your name into the microphone and keep any comments to 3 minutes, please. And since we're flipping now, we're going to go to item number 10 under reports and discussion items, Island Transit Service Improvement Plan. And I think our Executive Director, Mike Nortier, is here, past Commanding Officer of NAS Whitby. Welcome, Mike.
Well, thank you, Mayor, and certainly thanks to the council for giving me the opportunity to come in and talk tonight a little bit about our service improvement plan for Island Transit. I want to walk you through a couple of slides up front that'll just give you a little bit of background and context for Island Transit, and then we'll step into some discussions about the service improvement plan. So first, a little bit of background. Island Transit, most folks are aware of certainly the bus fleet. Today that exists or consists of about 60 buses. Those range in age from 5 to 15 years. And that's relevant to the conversation in that most of our buses, if you look at useful life, range from light duty of about 5 to 7 years to the heavy duty buses between 12 and 15 years. So if you factor that in and certainly consider where Island Transit was a couple of years ago, it's no great surprise the last new bus that Island Transit purchased was in 2012. So if you look at that 5 to 15 years, we're rapidly approaching the useful life of much of our fleet. Over the last couple of years, we had a number of grant opportunities that Island Transit wasn't able to move forward on just because we didn't have the financial position to move forward. Today, we're in a much better place, and we have started to execute on some of those grants. At the end of last year, we ordered the first of 18 buses that will begin replacing some of these buses. These are not in addition to our fleet, but we'll begin replacing those. And we expect to see the first 4 of those arriving next month. We'll see the remainder through the remainder of this calendar year. So Island Transit certainly serves Island County. Today there's 8 routes on Whidbey Island and 5 routes on Camano. That's where we exist today. As we move into the future, I'll talk a little bit about some of those changes in what we're considering moving forward. Again, a little bit of a statistic I'll throw out there for fixed route last year. Across Whidbey Island, we served about 537,000 folks. You know, folks that chose to ride transit for a number of reasons, everything from commuting to work, employment, business opportunities, access, medical health care, you name it, whatever drove them to look at those opportunities. On Camano, similarly, about 82,000 folks. But from year to year, from 2015 to 16, that's about a 12% drop in ridership. Same level of service for us, but a drop in ridership. A little more on Island County than across the nation, but across the nation in 2016, they saw just a little less than 6% drop in ridership. We can speculate on some of the causes for that. Certainly from 2014, we'll remember the price of gas was almost $4 a gallon. In 2015, it probably bottomed out late 15 and early 16. We're starting to see those gas prices go back up. So one of our points to consider is we'll watch the ridership numbers and see if we see a change as the price of gas goes back up again. Paratransit ridership, though, if you look at that number, and that's across both islands, 63,000 folks. That number did not go down in 2016. Not a surprise, about 11% increase as we, get better at informing and educating certainly the population that we serve on opportunities for paratransit. And certainly as the average age of Island County continues to increase, we have more opportunities or more requirements for paratransit out there amongst our constituents. Vanpool, similarly, about 185,000 riders through 2016. And again, a drop of about 12% for very similar reasons. As you look at Vanpool opportunities, again, the price of gas will be a big driver on folks deciding to use Vanpool or not. We'll talk a little bit more about Vanpool here in a second, though. But overall, Island Transit traveled just under 2.8 million miles in 2016, moving about 870,000 passengers in and around Island County. I'll spend a little bit of time talking about the commuter Vanpool program, probably one of the least understood programs for Island Transit, and that it's one of 3 services that we offer. Again, it's a minimum of 5 people that group together to typically transit to work someplace around either Island County or adjacent counties. If you look at some of the numbers from the Economic Development Council, it's around 4,000 folks that live outside of Island County that commute to Island County and work in Island County. Similarly, within the county, you're looking at about 6,000 to 9,000 folks that live in the county and work in the county. And then there's about 19,000 folks that live in Island County and work someplace else. A great number of those in Boeing and surrounding areas, certainly. So if you look at our Vanpool program, we right now have about 99 vehicles in the program. Some of those are slated to be removed at the end of the year, but we've got 59 active Vanpools. Over half of those, 30, go straight to Boeing from Island County. So you see a great number of folks that use those. And in some cases, for large employers like Boeing, there's a number of advantages to employees to use the van pool program. Everything from preferred parking in their parking lots, head-of-the-line privileges, at the ferries, getting across on the ferries, and then certainly use of the HOV lanes, et cetera. Island Transit provides coverage of, certainly maintenance of the vehicle. Certainly, we provide the insurance and the gas as well. What the riders pay is a fee based on the mileage they put on the vehicle. So it's again, one of 3 services that we offer. And if you look at the ferries, certainly on the south end, it's much more impactful than up here. But in the summer, we know how hard it is to get on the island using the ferries. And if you consider the van pool, that every van pool that's on the ferry, there's 4 other vehicles that are not on the ferry by using that van pool. So certainly an advantage to Island County folks. Every one of those commuter van pools either starts or ends in Island County. So that's the requirement for them to be able to use an Island Transit van pool. It either has to start or end in our county. And just graphically, here's a kind of a quick picture of if you want to look at where some of those van pools go. Not surprisingly, they go around to the surrounding areas around Island County. If you look at there are a number of Navy families in particular that may choose to stay in a location, and as they move between Kitsap, NAS Whidbey Island, and Naval Station Everett, commute with fellow sailors to those locations. We also have van pools that go as far as Seattle, Redmond area, serving University of Washington, Microsoft. Much smaller numbers, but a great number of them going to Boeing. So let's talk a little bit about revenue. So the biggest slice of the pie, if you look at that, or the donut, I guess I'll call it. About 2/3 of our revenue, in 2016 comes from the sales tax that we generate within Island County. 0.9% of the sales tax, that 8.7% that we pay on sales, supports Island Transit operations. The remainder, the largest chunk, is just under 30%, and that comes from our state contracts and grants. There's a number of those of importance. I'll talk about a couple of them. There are a couple that are very sustainable. So we get some support that comes both from federal and state to help with our paratransit operations, and that's sustainable and will continue in the future. Additionally, there's a grant through Washington State called the Sales Tax Equalization Grant, and that recognizes that per capita sales tax in Island County, we generate less sales tax than some of our partners. An example for example, I would talk about Skagit County. They have a 0.4% sales tax, but just due to the number of folks that live in Skagit County and the economic diversity they have in Skagit County, they generate much more than we do in sales tax. So that sales tax equalization is an opportunity to bring a little bit of additional money into Island Transit through the state. Again, that's a sustainable source, and we'll continue to plan for that in the future. 2 other grants that are not as sustainable. In the last biennium, we had all of our county connectors, any of our routes that connected outside of the county, the 411 route to the north of Whidbey, and also the 411 and 412 from Camino connecting to Skagit and Everett. Those routes are 100% funded by the state. That funding was a direct appropriation, and that ends in June of this year. So we have already asked for a grant to continue with assistance from operations with the state. We'd expected to hear earlier this month, and may still hear this month, but I'm certain most of you are aware that the discussions in Olympia have gone on a little bit longer and will probably not finish on time for this session. So the result of that is Washington State Department of Transportation has not yet announced the grant recipients. Having talked to them, though, I think that Island Transit is in a good place, and unless something dramatic happens in Olympia, we do expect to receive some operating assistance from Washington State Department of Transportation. The last couple of pieces just worth mentioning up there are, the fares. It looks like just under $500,000 in fares. To be clear, that fare is largely the van pool program that we're talking about. We only have one route currently today, then over on Camino, and we'll have a discussion later this year on fares for the remainder of the system. But the fares you see up there in 2016 were generated almost exclusively by the van pool program. So where do we spend our money? We spend, not surprisingly, as a service organization, about 3/4 of our budget is spent on wages and benefits. We have about 112 personnel, operators, dispatchers, and support staff, maintenance, facilities, et cetera. that operate Island Transit. And again, just about $7.1 million each year is spent on wages and benefits. As you look at some other numbers that I'll show you, fuel and operating expenses, most folks would think that's our largest expense. Really, that's about 7% of our operations, 7% of our budget is actual fuel in operations of the vehicles. Maintenance certainly is a portion, but again, wages and benefits is and will always be the largest portion of our budget. So some trends, some things that we watch over time. We've talked about the ridership. I don't want to confuse you too much, and don't look at the 2014 and to 15 change, because that's really a reduction in service. If you remember, Island Transit in 2014 reduced service. We eliminated Saturday service, and then reduced routes and frequency as well on a number of others. So the decline in ridership from 14 to 15 is a reflection of a loss of service, not necessarily a loss of ridership. The difference between 15 and 16 is a loss in ridership, and that's what I had talked about briefly earlier. So we've certainly benefited as Island Transit from an improving economy over the last couple of years, and also the price of fuel has come down from its high of almost $4 a gallon. So that's certainly benefited us, and you see that in the cost of fuel over here. We've looked at measures to continue looking at things that we can do to improve efficiency. So we've been trying to drive our cost per mile down. We'll continue to look at those opportunities. But not surprisingly, when you have fewer riders, the cost per rider is going to increase from 15 to 16. So those are some things that we continue to monitor and watch, and drive us to look at how we provide service to the community. So that's led into last fall, where we had a number of public meetings where we asked the public to consider what would you like to see different about Island Transit and the service that we provide to the community. We had a number of meetings, central, south, and north Whidbey, as well as Camino, and then also offered folks an opportunity to take a survey online. And between the two, received a number of inputs that led us through the end of last year and the beginning of this year to then look at our routes and look at ways that we could improve some services. On the next slide, I won't go through these, but I'll just show you that these are some of the questions that we considered as we looked at our routes and our structure. It was an opportunity, again, for us to look at those. Most of our routes, other than the service changes that we made in 2014, the reduction in service, most of our routes are largely the same as they have been since 2006. We'll recognize that Whidbey Island and Camino Island have developed just a little bit and changed over the last decade. So, again, a good opportunity for us to reflect on how we provide service to the community. So in accordance with our own, resolutions and bylaws, we don't make changes overnight. We'll deliberately plan those, and this is kind of the timeline that we laid out. So from the beginning of the year, looking at those survey results, looking at our routes, building models and changes and recommendations, and then ultimately we just wrapped up the last public meeting last night here in Oak Harbor. This is my last pitch to city councils as well. So again, looking at opportunities to get the word out as much and let folks have a look at our recommendations and changes that we'll present to the board, to our board, the Island Transit Board, at the end of the month for approval. And then you'll see that we're not planning on implementing any of these changes till about July timeframe. That gives us a couple of months to do everything from realigning our services internally, getting the schedules out, getting our operators trained, informing and educating the public on changes that'll come as well. And then I'll couple that with a couple of changes that'll come on social media and the internet as well, and I'll talk about those in a second. So here's kind of a before and after shot. And if you look at each of the different colors on this map represent a different route. So if you look at left and right, at first glance you'll look at those and say that not a lot of change. But as you really look at them carefully, I'll start to point out, and we'll dig down into these a little more detail. We are covering much of the same area, but I can tell you that we found a number of efficiencies or changes that we can make that enhance our service as we go forward. So let's talk about Oak Harbor. On the left is the routes that we currently run today, and on the right are the proposed changes. The first one I'll point out to you is what we call Route 3 that serves East Oak Harbor, and you can see it's an out and back run that goes out to the east and then comes back along the same route. It is our lowest utilization route, and one of them that we started looking at an early stage to say, what can we do to improve this route? So the first thing we looked at is opportunities to turn that into a loop and to pick up some other areas of Oak Harbor that Either we were servicing with other routes or to just give it an opportunity to get a broader area. Some things that don't show up real well on this slide, but one of our routes goes from Harbor Station, comes up, goes across Altfield Road, and then ends up going up to March's Point. By doing this change to the eastern route and covering that portion of the route, we were able to keep that other bus on the highway and reduce the time it took to run that route. So there's some time savings that we could look at in moving someplace else in the service. One of the other big changes that I'll point out is if you look over here, there's a Route 12 that's the western part of Oak Harbor, and it comes up to Altfield Road, comes over, comes back down on Oak Harbor Road, cuts across in front of the high school, goes down Heller Road, and then comes back to the east. We looked at some opportunities to change our other Oak Harbor Route 10 to kind of pick that same service up. Only added a few minutes to this route, but reduced the time on the Route 12 by almost 15 minutes. So as you start to add those up with the number of runs that we run through the day, I'll show you what the impact here is in the next slide. Is, for the Route 10 in particular, our Eastern Oak Harbor route, one of the feedback items we'd gotten from the community was it doesn't run early enough or late enough, particularly when you look at Skagit Valley Community College and evening classes. Our last bus was at 5:30 in the evening. So by saving time in some of the other routes, again, no addition of buses or personnel, but by realigning some of our services and how the routes run, we're able to add on earlier routes in the morning and later routes in the evening at the same cost. So again, just doing things more efficiently and then understanding where we want to try and serve the community. We still don't probably run as late as some of the college courses, but we're certainly improving our access to Skagit Valley Community College, the library, and in the evening on East Oak Harbor. Similarly with Route 12, that was, again, the West Oak Harbor route. We looked at, currently the 5 a.m. run that we have, very low ridership, so we looked at kind of shifting that a little bit later in the day to, again, accommodate some of that request for later day service. And again, doesn't really result in a change in our operations, but does, I think, better reflect where the needs of the community are. For the Route 3, we just talked about that. It typically did an out and back and only ran 4 runs, a couple in the morning and 2 in the afternoon. Again, with some of those efficiencies and changes, and we can now run a loop. It picks up other sections of other routes, and combined with efficiencies, we can offer that more often. And I think that one of the other things we looked at with all our routes was an opportunity to make sure that they connected with the routes better, so that when they get to Harbor Station or wherever their destination is, they have an opportunity to connect with other buses if they're looking at follow-on transfers. Our current existing routes, you can transfer, but in some cases they may be extended delays waiting in at Harbor Station or other locations. So we've minimized, not necessarily eliminated all those, but certainly improved the connection opportunities amongst our routes. I won't spend a lot of time on this slide, but I will say that if you looked at one of the things that I wanted the staff to do was, we were waiting on an answer from the state on whether or not we would get support for that operating grant for our out-of-county connectors. The 411 Whiskey is one of those. So what we wanted to do was identify if we have to support ourselves and can only operate with the revenue that we generate locally or sustainable fiscal resources, what can we support without abandoning the route entirely? So the numbers that you see in here that are highlighted in red would be routes that we would eliminate if we were not going to receive state funding. Again, I won't spend a lot of time on this because I think we have pretty good indications at this point that we do expect to receive support from the state. But it was a useful exercise for us in that we wanted to know what we could support internally and with our own resources without abandoning a route completely. In the past, that was some of the approaches that Island Transit took was if we didn't receive the support, we just sever a route. And for this route in particular, it is the connection to Skagit Transit and Skagit County that some of our riders will rely on for access to medical services or other government services they can't find in Island County. So here's another change that I'll highlight that made a significant difference. The route that goes from Oak Harbor to Coupeville, in the past or currently runs out West Beach, comes down to Libby Road, comes over to crosses Highway 20, goes down Madrona through Coupeville, comes across Highway 20 again and goes down to the Ferry and then out to Admiral's Cove, and then reverses and does the same northbound. By changing the route slightly, in other words, if we come southbound, stay on the highway on State Route 20, and then go down to the ferry, come over to Mariners Cove, and then when we come back northbound, swing up through Coupeville and Madrona. Just by making that change right there, what it meant was we currently make 5 connections in Coupeville where there's less than a 30-minute wait for a passenger to get off the ferry and get on a bus. By making those changes, there'll be 17 connections where passengers can get off the ferry and get on a bus in less than 30 minutes. So again, some minor changes that align better with other services. As you look at the south end, we also looked at very similar. Our longest run is a route that runs from Oak Harbor down to Clinton Ferry. It's also one of our busiest runs because particularly in the morning and the afternoon, we're supporting commuters getting on and off the ferry to the various park and rides on South Whidbey. So we wanted to look at ways to keep that route as much as we could on the highway. It did deviate off the highway to go past the state park on the way down. So now we've looked at some loops or some other routes that will feed into that and allow transfers while keeping that bus on the road, on Highway 525 down to the ferry and back. Same thing, we looked at using the same number of buses and operators, putting some commuter-specific concepts in the morning and the afternoon so that we can keep those buses flowing. One of the challenges we have, particularly in the summer, is as the ferry runs late, we have a choice. We can hold the bus at the ferry dock and allow passengers coming off the late ferry to get on the bus and then get up to the park and rides in their various destinations, which then results in further delays up the system is that bus is now held and can't make its following connections. Or we depart with the bus and leave a number of passengers that are coming off the ferry frustrated because they don't have a bus waiting. So what we've done is looked at some of our other routes and said, instead of fixing that one bus at the dock and waiting for the ferry, we can keep that bus on time and then have some of our medium-sized buses that do some commuter runs down on the south end and make some connections at the top of the hill at Ken's Corner that will allow them to get to Langley or Skagit Head. So we'll have one bus that's running the length of the island, it stays on time, and then as we have delays with the ferry, we have another bus that can pulse in and work off of the ferry as those changes occur. The other changes in the schedule meant that we improved our connections on the south end. During our service hours, we looked at in improving about 7 ferry connections, again, largely in the morning for the Clinton Ferry. So one I haven't spent much time talking about is Saturday service. We are not looking at Saturday service for July, but it is on our priority list of once we get an answer from the state here in the very near future on our grant funding, we'll know the rest of the picture or the rest of the puzzle for our finances, and then we've costed out what it takes to get back to Saturday service. So once we understand that, we'll be able to accurately forecast when we can restore Saturday service. And I would tell you that would be later 2017 or early 2018 at this point that we'll look at Saturday service being restored. It'll obviously be a reduced service. We're looking at a smaller number of routes on Whidbey and Camino, and certainly focused on between the hours of 8 and about 5 or a little after across the island. One other comment that's not in this presentation is we've also had discussions with NAS Whidbey Island starting in January, and the most recent was last week, looking at opportunities to start some kind of pilot program where we're going to offer a commuter service to try and get folks onto NAS Whidbey Island and off in both the mornings and the afternoons. We'll probably start that with a couple of runs in the morning and the afternoon. Like I said, 2 in the morning and 2 in the afternoon. When that will start, again, I'm not looking at necessarily July. We're still waiting on some answers from the Navy, but I think we've resolved some of the concerns about some of their security concerns, but we'll be able to work through those and look at an opportunity to get folks on. As we look at Saturday service in the future, that would be important as well because it would also give some of the single sailors on base the opportunity to come off the base without having access to a car and get into Oak Harbor itself. So that discussion continues, and I'm glad to report that certainly we're making progress, and I look forward to reaching conclusion on those discussions and talking about some kind of service that will be onto the base and off. And I think with that, I will leave time for any questions or comments that you have for us to consider as we look at these service improvements and before our formal presentation to our board at the end of the month.
Great report. Thank you very much. Appreciate you coming. Before I turn it to council, I wonder if anybody in the audience would like to ask a question. Any input? Okay, Councilor Munns?
When I was looking at your cost of operation, I know that a few of the airlines can hedge and buy fuel up when it's a good price and then have it just saved for them for when they need it. Can Island Transit do the same thing or not?
Could we? Perhaps. I don't think we're really large enough to do that. What we do is we use the state contract for fuel prices, though. So we are paying, and we don't necessarily pay the same price that you at the pump do. We're getting either a rebate or we do not pay some of the sales tax, gas taxes that are included. So we do pay the state contract price, which is a lower price, but we don't have a hedge or a futures contract for fuel.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Hello, Captain Nortier. I would say that Island Transit is one of the largest employers in the island and contribute to the economy of Island County. I think it was the Chamber of Commerce of Oak Harbor that identified those large employers with more than 100 employees. I have a question, though, for the ridership from Oak Harbor. Do you have a statistic of average riders from Oak Harbor either going north or south of the island?
I do. I don't have the numbers with me. If I can take that question and get you an answer later, I can give you a better breakdown of all our routes and where we pick up riders. What we don't track is where we drop riders off. In general, I can speculate on that, but I can tell you that where we pick folks up in Oak Harbor in particular and what routes were the busiest routes. The shuttles in town, the Route 10 and the Route 12 that go around Walmart, the high school, et cetera, do see a lot of ridership, as well as the Route 1. Most of the ridership on the Route 1 is on South Whidbey in conjunction with the ferry, though.
Very good. Thank you.
Yes, Councilor Servatius?
Thank you. I may have misheard you or misinterpreted. When you were presenting on slide 10, you showed the proposed 10 routes up to 19. And did that equate, did you say it was a cost savings or just increased efficiency? If it was a cost savings, I was curious how you can almost double the routes and still save money.
Again, if you looked at I talked about the Route 12, which was a 45-minute route, and by changing it, making it a direct path, we saved 15 minutes on every one of those runs. So if you looked at that and a couple other savings we made across the system, we didn't increase the cost in it, but we could shift those service hours to this route and offer more frequency.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, Councilor Almbert.
Thank you. Mr. Nortier, much of this is repeat here for us, those of us who are on this board, but I really want to emphasize the point that your office, your position, your staff, and the board have really worked hard to improve the efficiency of Island Transit and still have it budget neutral. And I think that's where we were going with this from the very beginning when you came on board. And it's been a real pleasure working with you at Island Transit. He is very professional. He gets it together. As you can tell by his presentation, he has done these types of presentations before. Thanks very much. Great point. I appreciate the comment. If I didn't state it up front, you're right in that we will always operate within a balanced budget. Some of the challenges that led us into 2014 were some deficits that Island Transit operated in the past, and we're very aware of that. One of the concerns I have, and I've shared with our board, is that while we see a definite increase in our in the economy and our sales tax, until very recently, I was unsure how much of that is coming from 3 large capital projects. One of those being the wastewater treatment plant for Oak Harbor, Whidbey Health construction in Coupeville, and the Navy's construction. We know that we see a material benefit from the sales tax that's generated from materials that come in there. And recently, with the help of the Economic Development Council and Department of Revenue, I think we can at least peel back the construction piece and know what that we're seeing as a one-time bump so that we don't plan for a revenue in the future that may not be there.
Yeah, right, yes.
And if I may add one other comment too, in the process of reviewing those budgets, I think we have, three months right now of reserve, operating reserve, in anticipation of a big drop in sales tax revenue or other sources, so that we're not going to put the brakes on just as soon as the economy goes sideways. Sure. That was 3 months, I think, correct? 3 months, correct. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions?
Nope.
Great report. Thank you again.
Okay.
Really
Well, thanks, Mayor. I
it.
appreciate the opportunity
Yes.
to come and talk to you, sir.
You bet. Okay, I think we're on to our last item for the evening, which is on your agenda. If you're working, that's item number 7 now. Ordinances and resolutions, Resolution 17-08, Clean Water Facility adopting the 30% Phase 1 Windjammer Park design documents. And we have our city engineer, Joe Stoll, at the podium. Take it away, Joe.
All right, thank you, Mayor, council members. Once again, thank you for having me here again tonight. Seems like I'm here every couple weeks. And you keep asking me back. I don't understand with these thick packets, but in any case, I have laid out a little bit of an agenda for you so we can walk our way through the presentation. I'm going to start out with why are we improving Windjammer Park? Why are we even attempting this task? So the clean water facility is largely why. We have restoration mitigation efforts that we have to do due to impacts from construction of the new treatment plant. And sometime way back when we selected Windjammer Park vicinity, we said that we wanted this project to be a catalyst for other improvements in the area. And improvements that we'll be doing as part of Windjammer Park are necessary to just access the plant. It's the improvements that we're doing completely surround it. So let's move on to public feedback. So we went through a Windjammer Park integration plan. This has taken us back even further. We got citizen advisory group that we put together, had 17 members from the community. We tried to express a diverse community interests. We had 5 meetings, and ultimately the citizen advisory group endorsed the plan. We also had 2 in-person and meetings. Well, in person, I mean by inviting the public to these open house / citizen advisory group meetings. And we also had an online open house where people could submit comments. So what we heard from that feedback, this is a familiar slide, I've used it before. Some things are givens. You know, you're going to have restrooms and kitchens and trails and playgrounds. It's a park, so family friendly, that came out. We did hear, which was a good conversation, was the current RV park. If we were to reconstruct the RV park by current standards, it's not really an efficient use of the park space. And that was a tough conversation to have, but ultimately the citizen advisory group decided that that wasn't the appropriate place for the RV park, although the city may find someplace else that they'd like to provide that service. And views of the water, of course, are important, not only from the park, but view corridors like City Beach Street and Beeksma. The ball fields, at some point, should they be relocated? We've included that in the plan so that we have an idea of how this is going to expand the park. But of course, we won't do that phase of the work until they are in fact relocated. So the integration plan, it wasn't a whole new concept. We built it on previous planning documents that were done over the years. We didn't want to start over with a clean slate, so we kind of thieved some of those ideas and moved forward with them. We used the public feedback that we received to develop and adopt the plan that we adopted in June of 2016. And a copy of the ultimate plan is actually in the agenda packet tonight. So if you wanted to see any of those comments that were submitted, they're all included. What that resulted in was an overall plan for the entire area. And I won't get into all the details. Once again, this is the detail is in the agenda packet, and we've talked about it before. But we came up with different program elements for the entire thing so we could stitch it together later. And in that same process, we says, well, we can't do it all at once, so let's break it into phases. And this was the phasing that we came up with during the integration plan process. And I'm going to point at the map over Doug's head. I'll start high so I don't nail him with the pointer. But, so phase 1 and 1B were intended to be completed with the treatment plant because there's mitigation efforts for impacts to the park, use of the park that need to occur down here with the restrooms and kitchen. And then along here, this is where we're stockpiling material, and we need to, between the two, we need to have some place to put all that, with 60, 70,000 yards of material. So, Windjammer Park Phase 1. So how are we going to get Phase 1 going? So we expanded Phase 1 actually because we felt like where it was originally stopping, kind of in this area, it was kind of incomplete. So we extended it down further, down to the parking area and boat launch. We also made sure that it included everything, including demolition of the Windjammer, what am I talking about? Woodby Island Bank and City Beach Street reconstruction. So it was more of a comprehensive, and this boundary, could change a little bit as we move forward through the design process. We expanded Corollo's contract in November to include the scope for the boundary shown. Of course, there's always, little caveats and things that change as you go through the permit process and the public process, but that's the general boundary. So once again, like we did with the integration plan, we went out to the public with Phase 1. With the integration plan, we were at the 10,000-foot level. When we moved on to the Phase 1, we got down to the 1,000-foot level. Instead of this is where we want a playground, we got, well, what kind of playground equipment would we like? So we got into more detail so we could give our design team good direction. We had a great participation. We had a nice open house where we had some good attendance. And we had a really successful online open house and a lot of comments. Once again, a copy of this, the report that was provided for this is in the agenda packet. If you want to see, if your comments in there, you're more than welcome to take a look. If you made any and entered them in there, they're documented in the packet. So what we heard is largely the same, but more detailed from the integration plan. Once again, the givens, you got the restroom walkways. Now, instead of just playgrounds, it's nature play area. Start talking more about what kind of park furnishings were preferable and, some different concepts in the splash park. We got into the participants preferred a more natural and simplistic aesthetic, flexible and multi-purpose. So the fields could be used for soccer or the carnival. Because we got a limited amount of space, we want to make the best use of it. So, and we got some, thoughts from the public on what their style inspirations, more modern or more rustic type thing. And we got a lot of good information and incorporated that into what we've done so far. So why are we in such a rush to move forward with Phase 1? Well, they're actually continuing. We've got the 30% design end of March. They're intending to have 60% design in May. We've got the comments from staff and our GCCM contractor back to them, and they're intending to move forward with design to 60% and have that back to us so that we can get our permits going and seek funding. 90% design that incorporates any comments that we receive back during the permitting process by July, with the final bid set ready in September so that we can start construction in October. It's an aggressive schedule, and it's intended that way so that we can, as soon as Hoffman is ready, we can start constructing the facilities outside the walls so that you can start driving big trucks in to get the plant operational. And then we'll move towards the west side of the park and kind of do it all phased across in that direction, east to west. So the resolution covers a whole lot of items. There's a page and a half of whereases, and what it boils down to, and these are straight out of the resolution, I just copied and pasted, but I'll summarize as best I can. I don't need to read them all to you, but short story is we'd like for you to accept the 30% drawings, authorize the staff and project team to proceed with the design, acquire permits, and chase after some funding. authorize staff to proceed with the construction procurement using our existing construction method, which is the GCCM. We'd like to, since this is going to ultimately result in closure of the Stay Sail RV Park, we wanted to set a date on that, and we believe that by October of 15, we'll be needing to work in that area. So we've included that in the resolution, as well as continuing the design so that we can meet the schedule of clean water facility construction deadlines. And then also allow us to pursue Windjammer Park improvements beyond Phase 1 components on a separate implementation timeline as funding becomes available. And I'll just get straight to the point on that one. That allows us to chase down anything that has to do with an entryway to the park. And that, in my mind, gives us the direction to move forward with maybe a Phase 2 that looks at some concerns that have come up or some comments, which are awesome. I'm glad to see the excitement behind the project, but it allows us to look at the area around Beeksma and Bayshore. So what are the next steps? We have a whole bunch of permits to chase after that are going to take some time. We'd like to get started on that. And then we'd like to have, to finalize the design in fall so we can get the bids out and get started on work. And with that, I'll take any questions.
Before I ask the council for questions, I'd like to open it to the public. See if anybody here has any comments, questions, input. Doesn't look like it. Going once, twice. Okay. Back to the council. Councilor Munns.
Thank you. I just want to commend the design team and the staff for diligently working. It's been a mess, interesting mess, for so long, but as we get this beautiful building up and running that we're very excited about, that is the future, the citizens don't deserve a giant mud puddle, because usually what happens is you get the new building and the first thing to be cut is the landscaping around it. And then you kind of wallow through that until suddenly someone comes up with some money. And this is where they're going to be very close. And I just think that uplifts everybody for everything around it and regenerates, so rejuvenates. I just want to say thank you for that, because I think that has always been very important since the beginning of this project, that we just don't have the beautiful building, but we also at least have some of the pieces around it to show off, because we do have an awesome park. And that giant dirt pile with the little, looks like miniature Tonka trucks on it that you see moving back and forth. Anyway, it'll be, I'm just very excited about it. So thank you, and please tell the staff that this is wonderful. I mean, it takes everybody's hands as a team to make it work, so thank you.
Okay. Yes, Councilor Romberg.
Thank you, Mayor. So, Mr. Stowell, I'll get right to the point. November 15th, the council approved the modified or the expanded Phase 1 that included, in your exhibit up there, that blue area. Could you go to that for
Sure.
just a moment, please? That one right there. Now go to the previous one. That one right there. Okay. In my memory of going through this process step by step, one of the main reasons we were going with Phase 1 is because we have that stockpile out there and we have a fair amount of fill to go around that building, which before too long we will be transporting that. Is that correct?
Correct.
Yes. Okay. Do you have any idea what the balance, approximately what the balance of material is left that will not be needed around the building but will be used for topographical features in the park, et cetera?
We're working on that right now. The grading is underway for the 30% drawings. And the word I get is we're We got plenty of material to move around.
No, I don't doubt that for a minute, but that's what, so you're saying the grading is underway right now for the 30%?
The design of the
Design.
grading, yes.
Okay. So then, at some time, this old man forgot about in November 15th that we approved to combine or expand this area. Go to the next exhibit then that shows the blue, where we expanded that all the way around the kind of the north and the west perimeter to take it right down to the water. But in the process, we did not make provisions for dealing with the future roundabout. The roundabout was, in the original concept, to be there for either a new windmill or a relocated windmill if it was practical to relocate the existing windmill as a feature, an attraction feature coming into the park. And it's a signature feature to the entrance to the park. Now, when I supported the expanded version of Phase 1, I did not think about the consequences of leaving the roundabout out in this phase. This is the consequence. If we leave it out, that means we're going to do substantial improvements to the interior of that park. And at some time in the future, we're going to disrupt a substantial area to the entrance to the park, which seems, from a constructability progression for me, doesn't make any sense. Our civil work should be consistent in one phase or one part of the project that we anticipate improving. And to me, this is, and I don't mean to be cute with this, but by not including that roundabout in there, just for the roundabout space and the civil part of it, it's like building a nice house, finishing the interior, and just leaving off the front porch and putting up a sheet of plywood for your door. That doesn't attract anybody into that nice park. And if we don't do it now, get it on the board now, it probably will never happen. So, and another part that's completely separate to this, we have a substantial drainage problem in that area. And you guys know this. You haul, or Public Works hauls portable pumps down there, stormwater pumps, to control that flow down there. Would it make sense, and you probably can't answer the question right now, but wouldn't it make sense to have a pump lift station in the middle of that roundabout and have, for example, the windmill feature to enclose that, so you accomplish two things. You attract people to an attractive park. You have a lift station there to deal with the stormwater, and we don't have to keep hauling portable pumps down there 2 or 3 times a winter. That's just a thought to consider, and I think that's a conversation we have to have. But in terms of this phase, the 30% phase, I believe it should be included in this design. When I look at the estimate that we were given, there is 30% contingency in here for the construction. So if you're worried about money, there's 30%, and I'm not calling it slop, I'm calling it contingency money, because you don't know, we don't know, the engineers and the architects don't know. It's because we're going from conceptual plans to design plans now. That 30% contingency amounts to $1,264,127 they have in here. Having a modification to that plan, since we have computer-aided design, they've already done the as-built printout on all the curb lines, right-of-ways, and stuff that's in there. That's already, Corolla already has that. It's in our packet. That should be looked at to possibly move that roundabout slightly to the south so that we do not have to impact neighboring properties. When I say slightly, it might be, I don't know, could be 50 feet south, because the city owns the property on both sides of the street. It needs to be considered now and not have this conversation, at least in this council member's opinion, have this conversation at the 60% completion or even 90, we need to know now. I'd rather pay the money now than pay it later if there's going to be an impact on this. Thank you.
Councilor Servades?
Thank you, Mayor. Very similar thoughts to Mr. Almberg. We, at the workshop at the end of March, when it was presented, I think maybe that was the first time I noticed or realized, maybe similar to my peers, I don't know, that the roundabout was not included when we, and I reflected back because you referenced the November meeting when we approved the amendment with Carollo, and we, you know, that diagram was in the packet, and we all keyed in on the blue area, and I was excited. I thought, hey, this is a stretch. I applaud staff for taking this on. Council, we need to take this on, figure out how to get this done and fund it. And I think I just assumed, and now possibly incorrectly, that grand entrance or an entrance of some sort, windmill or not, but a grand entrance was included in the scope of work. And as I reflect back, and since that workshop at the end of March and the construction meeting we were in, the next day I realized that's not currently included. Before I comment on a couple of those, I want to just take a little side trip here. One of the whereases that's in here, you said authorize staff to proceed with construction procurement through the clean water facility, through the GCCM process. Why is that advantageous to us to continue with phase one through the GCCM process?
It's, quite frankly, it's integral to the completion of the project. The contractor that's out there now building, you know, the structure, it also has to build the access to start it up. So there are certain things that it's helpful to use that delivery method to get those items completed. And that largely stays close to the clean water facility and south, but because we have that large pile of dirt as well to handle, it extends across the north side of the park as well.
So adding to this approximately $10 million project, I understand, I guess, immediately surrounding the facility, but it still makes sense, you think, to include their 4.28 on that whole west, northern edge of the park, west side.
You know, we struggled, and I'm not sure I completely understood the question.
Is it something, I understand using Hoffman's expertise, maybe their delivery, their crane, their whatever, right around the plant. But when we're predominantly just moving dirt, is that something that we could do or have local contractors do? Because most of that is going to be dirt work and utilities on that whole side of the park. I just didn't key in on that whereas until you mentioned it in your slide.
I think I can help answer that. First off, the GCCM allows us to do a lot of unique things that traditional delivery doesn't. If you remember, design, bid, build, you design it, you put it out to bid, and then you build it. With GCCM, we can do it in phases, which is what we've done successfully with this project from the onset. What helps with, you have to remember that even though Hoffman is the general contractor, GCCM on this, there are rules that apply to how we procure things. They have to put packages out to bid, but they do it on our behalf. So instead of having an earthwork package and a landscape package and having to do all these different things, they do that all on our behalf. It's not, in some cases, like with the concrete work, we've negotiated that work, which we're allowed to do. In some cases, we bid it out and we go with the low bidder of the subcontractor that wins. And Hoffman is also able to bid on that project. If they haven't yet, but they could.
Okay. All right, thank you. So I'll come back to the entrance, which was really my concern. If we look at, well, I already referenced when we approved this in November, but if we go back even further when we approved the Windjammer Park Integration Plan, every time we've shown this to the public, there is some form of a grand entrance there. When you look at digitally in here, it's page 345, it's exhibit or attachment E, the Windjammer Park Phase 1 30% design documents. If you go to page 345, there is no reference whatsoever in any of these drawings. I'm scrolling over there.
Are you I don't have page numbers on mine. Are you looking at the 30% drawings?
Yeah, it's about the fourth page into that packet. So for council, if they're looking at it digitally, page 345, I think it's the fourth or fifth page of attachment E. There is, and I realize it's 30%, but there's really no reference whatsoever to any kind of a grand entrance. And whether or not, as Mr. Allenberg pointed out, that gets shifted a little bit south, for me, to support this, I need to find a way to get that back in there, some form of an entrance. And whether or not we get all the finished gingerbread, relocated windmill, new windmill, I'm not willing to take the risk for the public that we're going to get that done in 2 years or 3 years. I very much appreciate the work staff's doing in the aggressive timelines and why you want to keep this moving forward so rapidly. But for me, I'm not willing to take the risk of not including that now. And we might have to, either find more funding in our, and scrape the bottom of the barrel, or forego something else in the park to get that done. But when I consider the possible rework and once again just the risk of not having an entrance after all of this work, it just doesn't make sense for me. I know Mr. Allenberg referenced that 30% number that we read in there. And I was asking Brett some questions the other day on a $100 million plus project. We had $5 million in contingencies, and we've done very good at keeping that almost non-existent that we had to use any of those. So on a $10 million approximate project, we have a 30% contingency, or not 30%, that'd be 3 million, but a 1.2 million is the number Mr. Allenberg stated as far as the contingency. Jump in if you want.
1.264.
And that was probably just one half of it. I think there's probably 3 million in contingency total.
That's for phase 1 and phase 1B, the original estimate, excuse me.
Okay.
Okay. At any rate, I'll let my peers weigh in, and I don't know if staff has, I know we talked briefly in that construction meeting about some possibilities. I'm prepared to somehow, I talked briefly to Dr. Merriman about making a motion to somehow include an entrance and cost estimates in any design work going forward to put my mind at ease so that I can support this. I just don't feel comfortable the way it's laid out. And I'm not really blaming staff. I know you made the comment that you were trying to move forward and keep the costs in check, and I very much appreciate that. Sometimes, though, I think it's okay to pause for a second and say, hey, wait a minute, maybe this is something we need to figure out how to get back in there. So that's all I have at the moment. Thank you, ma'am.
Would you mind if I responded? I have a lot of good responses to his questions. Is that
Sure.
okay?
Go ahead.
I'm sorry.
I'm fine with that.
So there's several things. So we have, right now, we estimate it's going to be about 10 million for the entire phase 1. We've estimated that about 50% of that would come from the sewer treatment plant, and 50% would come from other sources. We are cutting it really close budget-wise to being able to come up with all the money necessary, and that's why we need to chase after additional funding and why we need the drawings to do that, so we can chase after grant funding for the splash park and paths and trails and different things. So one of the comments was if we, what I've been thinking about personally is what can I cut out of this if, say for example, we're only at the very preliminary parts of this. When we actually get bids in, what if it comes in high? What do I do? So I'm thinking in the back of my mind, what can I cut out of here to make this a successful project and be proud of it? And there's things that have to happen as part of this, or else it just doesn't work. We got to have, City Beach has to be built, and around this site, so we have access in and out of the plant. We have parking requirements as part of an agreement with a neighboring property that have to be addressed. So Woodby Allen Bank has to be taken down. So those areas are given. Those have to be done. So you move south, we have a restroom and a kitchen down here that have been impacted, and as part of our SEPA requirement requires replacing those. So we're taking a huge amount of the material that's stockpiled and bringing it over here, and in some cases, bringing it up 8 to 10 feet adjacent to the building, and even all the way up to the pathway, bringing it up a foot or two. So that's kind of a given. And as you move, my pointer is giving up on me. As you move along the north side of the park, that area has to be restored because we've been using it as laydown yard. So we can't just leave it dirt, we've got to do something with it. So I keep moving further to the west. So the things that I can start trimming off are the things that we added on, being hopeful, which would be the work all the way down to the waterfront on the west side, and then start chasing the parking lot up that west edge as things that I can crop off of there. So, I mean, that's what's going on in the back of my head is how do I make sure that I have enough to have a complete project? And I'm so excited to hear that we're looking forward to doing more, nice grand entrance. But keep in mind, the entire, there was a concern about it kind of, feeling like it's unfinished at the grand entrance. Well, we have an entire edge around the inside along the field area it's going to be feathered in because we brought in a substantial amount of fill. And the goal is to have a real exciting first phase so that we continue moving forward. And the best way I can accomplish what I hear you asking for is to keep moving with phase one as we've shown it, and immediately, as soon as possible, if you'd like to, if I get direction to, come forward with another scope of work with Corollo to design as much of that grand entrance as you select for me to do, and we'll get them started on it right now. And that allows us to continue with the permitting that we need to do for phase one, and chase right behind it with phase two, which is the entrance. And with any luck, we'll push them together parallel. And when it comes time to bid them, and this addresses Mr. Allenberg's concern, is if things go like I hope they will, and everything comes in, the bids come in good, and we're ready to move forward with phase two construction as well, logistically, the construction moves from west to east because we need the treatment plant side done first so we can start up the plant. Then, as we move across to the west side of the property, we're ready because we have our GCCM contractor. We can contract the roundabout or whatever entrance feature we need, right in behind it. And I also want to keep in mind that we went through a good public process with both of these phases, especially down to the 1,000-foot with phase one. I'd like to do the same thing with whatever we choose for the grand entrance. And that's up to your direction if you'd like me to do that or proceed with the plan that we have. I'm happy to do it any way you'd like to, and I'm really excited to move forward with it if you'd like me to.
Councilor Servati?
Thank you, and I appreciate that. A couple of things. I'm looking at two pretty qualified engineers right in front of me, and I don't know degree-wise what's required. Why do we need Corollo to design a basic roundabout? Can we not do that in-house? And, well, let me pause. Is there any reason we can't do that in-house?
That's a really fair question. I hope to, at future workshops, bring forward, you've seen it already, the CIP list of projects that the engineering division is working on. The treatment plant isn't the only thing we're working on. We're actually working on a stormwater plan update, which would address the stormwater concerns. We're working on a water system improvement project at the top end of O'Leary. We have the FDOC repairs, the lids to repair at the lift station down on Pioneer and Passac. My staff is taxed enough. They probably have the technical capabilities of doing it, but not the hours in the day. The other thing that is a concern for me is, given that area, there's more to it than just drawing lines and elevations. We have a wetland that we're trying to buffer right there that could get entered into the mix. We talked about moving it to the south. That's a good idea. That avoids having to purchase any property to create the entrance. And then we have another issue to address is, can we actually move the windmill or do we need to rebuild it? But With that, I think the best course of action is to continue with Corollo and their expertise and dovetail in as closely as we can into the plans we have.
Okay, last comment if I could, Mayor.
Go ahead.
So, and I appreciate that. I know you guys have a lot of stuff in the air. If, I'm just going to state it again then, even if we were to move it to the south to simplify property acquisition, then it makes all that much more sense to know that that's occurring now so that, no, you don't have the bigger picture, so that street alignment, that entrance into the crescent-shaped parking area makes as much sense as possible. I guess you could exit as a 90 off that. If it came further south, you'd exit as almost a 90 degree to the east. But once again, I'd much rather have that work figured in, the substrate, whatever the technical term is, prepared now. And maybe we need, as a council, to step back and scrape the bottom of the barrel and see if we can find a way to fund that. I know you threw around different dollar amounts. I don't know if we know exactly what that is, 500, 700, whatever it takes to get that done, $1 million, I don't know. But I'll pause at the moment. That's
Mayor Pro Tem?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to need a certain clarification on the proposal of Mr. Omberg. In our agenda bill, under Phase 2, it includes the construction of the runabout at Grand Entrance and relocation of the windmill. The clarification that I need from Mr. Omberg is his proposal to move this construction under Phase 1 in that roundabout and to include another project to put a certain pump in that area and cover it with that windmill on top.
Mr. Omberg?
Okay, I'll answer it this way. And thank you for the question, Mr. Begal. The stormwater lift station, if you will, is an afterthought after considering that there's potentially going to be a roundabout there and that we have a potential drainage problem. Otherwise, if we didn't, we wouldn't have portable pumps moving down there every year, 2 or 3 times a season for the last several years. So why not have a pump system that would discharge water out of that area automatically rather than going through the labor and equipment to do a temporary one? But I don't know the elevations, I don't know the details about that. It was an afterthought, and it was just, I would like for engineering to consider that as an option that we would have in there. It'd be completely conceivable to have a windmill there, and it could still be a pump house. It would be. The pump chamber would be below ground, the windmill building would be above ground. And you'd have electrical there, and you have a fairly close discharge location into the Friend Marsh. And I think that's where the water goes anyway when they have the portable pumps there. Isn't that correct? The water eventually is pumped into the marsh, correct?
You know, I believe so, but I'd have to look at it
Well,
closer.
whether it goes into the outfall or goes into the marsh, we have a pumping problem there because when we have a heavy rain, we have to deal with the stormwater, and it's a low point. So why not take that water at the low point, pump it out? But the roundabout, I have two thoughts, 2 proposals for consideration. This is to help answer your question, Mr. Begal, and for you, Mr. Stowell. If you go back to the previous there. Now, when we combined 1 with part of 3 that came all the way down to the southwest corner, that area was essentially, we took all of area 1, 1B, and part of 2, and all the way down into 3. That's what when you go to your blue line, that's essentially what we did. Now, it's really common in construction, in bidding process, regardless of who is doing this. If you look at that southern portion that we just added in, there's some amenities and some structures and things in that area. Consider this. What if on the bid package we have that as one of the alternates? And we have the roundabout as one of the alternates. And you may even have some of the other items within I can't see it with the coloring in there, any structures in there. Some structures can be built after the parking lot is in and all of the underground stuff is in. Some of those things can be done at a later time. But the civil work to come into that park, both from Beeksma Drive and from the other side, it has to be done in this phase, in my opinion. And we know that the fill, all of that fill that's stockpiled out there, probably makes sense to have Hoffman move that. It's part of the Corollo design, and for continuity in the utilities and for the construction process, it probably makes sense to stay with them and not disrupt that process. But when it comes to that windmill out in the roundabout area, at a minimum, absolutely at a minimum, we should at least pencil in where that roundabout will work today. If it has to be moved south, we pencil it in, and we design this process, this modified phase 1, with the bump out for where a future roundabout would be, because I think it would be stupid for us to sit up here and say, yeah, let's go ahead and design that. And we get Corollo in here and MWA, or the architect group, and they do all, and the landscaper and all that, they do all that stuff. We get the pretty picture, and now we says, oh, now we gotta move this thing south by 40 feet or 50 feet or something like that. Why don't we just consider it now? We don't have to build it now. I think it should be built now, but we have to go through the bid process, and why not have some alternates in that bid process that gives you an opportunity to pick and choose, so that you have a nice entrance to your park that we're putting so much money into. I could even come in, not me, but we could actually come in and do that southwest corner even after that whole parking lot is paved. That doesn't have to happen the first phase. It could be an easy alternate to have in this thing.
So we're answering Mayor Pro Tem's question first off, so I'm going to take it back to him now. Did you
I'm good.
have more?
Satisfied.
Okay, are you satisfied? Okay. So did you want to respond now, or
No, I think I'm okay.
should I look for how about other council questions? Yes, Councilor Munn?
I guess just dovetailing on, part of the reason too is since it's all tore up before it gets more of the finished stage, if we're going to move the windmill, then it made more sense to move it now when we're shuffling dirt and we've got big ruts and making up roads and stuff, to at least get it moved so that you don't decide when you've got it finished and planted, oh yeah, we've got to move the windmill and we want to move it out there, to have that kind of figured out if you can do it or not. I know that Shorty Dejean in town was one of the original builders of that, and he's still living and very active. And I'm sure he could come up with other people that can answer some of the questions on how they did it, why they did it, and whatever. So, but I think that was one of the reasons too, was let's move it out before we start making it nice, and then decide we've got to bring in big trucks and if it can be moved or taken down in pieces and then redone. So that's the only thing I wanted to add on. Thank you.
Okay. Councilor Umber?
You know, if I may answer, or at least make a comment, Ms. Munn's comment about the windmill. In my knowing very little about the structure of that building, just being on the outside of that building, I'm not sure it makes sense to put money into moving that building basically dismantling a lot of it and then reassembling it as opposed to leaving it where it is and building a new one that suits the roundabout size and the area. I'd rather put money at a new facility rather than take an old one down, try to put it back together. That's my initial thought about that. I don't think we have to. At a minimum, we should have at least a location of where the future roundabout should go so that we're not designing and building amenities, features, landscape features in there that have to be either redesigned or torn out at a later date. It's better to have the space made available now. And if the bids come in and you have alternates in there to allow you to do that, and that's the priority that we choose, then we have that option. But I don't think it's critical to say we have to have a windmill today or next year.
Councilor Servatius?
Thank you. You know, this is obviously, probably stating the obvious, but if we were to wait phase 2, how do people get into the park once we have to, if we're going to be tearing all this up and have massive construction, building a parking lot and all of that, you just have a thin little sliver on Beeksma there. It's going to be enough of a disruption to the homeowners down in Dillard's and that on that street. Well, I don't know why we wouldn't deal with it once and get it over with rather than maybe in, I don't know if it happened in 6 months or 9 months or in 2 years or 36 months, to then go back to that area and put in all of that entrance. And, you know, we've talked about different, I wasn't able to make the retreat. One of the items I asked Mr. or Dr. Merriman to bring up was the 2% funds. I don't know if any of that could qualify as a potential tourist attraction, or we've talked about, we've got a fairly healthy stabilization fund that's grown, but I would volunteer to, you know, if we need to call a special meeting in the next week or two to really talk about funding or to keep you guys on track, I'll call it the lower crescent, the north part of the light green area, section D. Is there a lot of programming in there? I think the total estimate here was $640,000 an acre. Was that the number we have?
It was right in that area.
And I understand that's an average number across the whole thing, but is there an acre there of improvements that don't get done immediately, but we're able to swap that to make sure that that roundabout gets done? I just don't want to have to disrupt that whole entrance, not only the traffic and all of that, the only entrance to that whole side of the park, but also to pay for any extra rework or engineering.
Okay. Yes, Councilor Campbell.
Thank you. Is there any way that we can stop designing this tonight and cause the engineering department or Corolla, the designers, to put that roundabout in the design for the next time we have a meeting?
Certainly can. Well, let me explain a little bit of the process that I'd have to go through from engineering side. Corollo and our design team didn't expect to have to do design for the roundabout, so that would likely mean an amendment to their contract and a change of the scope of services. So that'd take a little bit of time to negotiate and bring forward to you as an amendment. And then at that point, then they would start design on it. We'd also have, as part of that, if you choose to, we can discuss this later, but I'd like to have some public feedback and go out and see if in fact that's what the public wants is a roundabout there. Maybe it's an arch. Maybe it's something else. I don't know. I mean, we've gotten this far with the windmill, but I think it's prudent to follow the same pattern of public outreach that we've done to this point, so there's some time associated with that. I'm figuring it's probably going to delay phase 1 a couple months, at least, if not 3.
Yeah, we're 3 months, 4 months getting into here.
right? And we're in kind of a crunch on the tail end to get access to the treatment plant. I don't, that's why we feel it's so important to move forward. But if that's what council would like to have us do, we'll make the best of it and make it happen.
Councillor Umber?
Thank you, Mayor. You know, all due respect to you, Mr. Stowell, but I think that you're jamming us up against the wall by saying 2 months. This is not a 2-month adjustment to this thing. 2 months is expensive, and we don't want to hold this thing up. There is a way to accommodate this design with a language provision in there to have a space identified with a schematic drawing, at least on that corner. When they start the design on this thing, they're not going to instantly put a stamp on this entire property. There's phases into this thing. We have time to have another conversation about this. And the other thing is, I don't want to go back out to the public on this because we have had this windmill, we've had that roundabout there in almost every conceptual drawing that we've had out there. And it was a fairly popular statement, even coming from the staff said that coming down the highway, this makes a statement and entrance to our park. So why are we going to kick this around and go out for another 2 months to play with it? We don't want to do that. I don't want to do that. So I would be willing to make a motion that we proceed with this design with the modification potential at that intersection so that we have time to pull in the dimensions that we would need and the setbacks from that wetlands. And by golly, if I can't do it because of some physical feature that makes it impossible, then we can tell the public we can't have a marquee entrance to this thing because we have a legitimate reason. Right now, we don't have a legitimate reason.
Councillor Servadius?
Thank you, and I support that. If we have to have an amendment to Corollo, we're going to pay them anyway, and I think we would pay them less now than we're going to pay them. If we can get it incorporated in the early stages here, we're going to pay less now than we're going to pay in 24 or 36 months or whatever when we'd have to go back to all of this, and I just want it to be congruent. So there is a way, Mr. Campbell, and I'm happy, Mr. Campbell asked, can we stop this? I'm happy as well to make a motion to include not only the design, but cost estimates for that in any communications that we receive going forward. I feel that passionate about getting it back in there, and it's not, this isn't on you guys, you know, but it's something we need to tackle and find the funding for if it's something, well, I feel passionate about it.
Can I jump in just sheepishly at this point? We can do that through a different method other than modifying phase 1 by just calling it phase 2 and having us work with Corollo to come back with an amendment to do the design and incorporate it as we move forward. And that would allow me and the team to proceed forward with the permitting and things that we need to get accomplished while also accomplishing your goal or your desire to have that entrance included. I think we can do both. I don't think it has to be included in the 30% drawings of phase 1 and still be accomplished. Look at all the things that we've done in phases on this project, how this thing is developed. We originally dug down, 7 feet with one GMP. We came back and drove sheet piles with another. We did the outfall with another one. We dug a deep hole and started pouring concrete. All those things were done as separate sets of plans that all interleave together. And what I'm suggesting is that in order to take advantage of the time in our contractor and keep this thing moving, we can do both. We can keep phase 1 moving forward with its process, and we can start phase 2 and make a determination on how big that is and move that forward at the same time as well.
So thank you, Mayor. In considering your suggestion, if we're expecting 60% in May, 2 weeks, and 90% in July, I think is what you said, how then are we incorporating, dovetailing congruently phase 2 with a schedule that's moving that fast if we don't do it right now?
Well, we would be doing it right now, and if we asked tonight to have it included, the whole thing gets pushed to meet the later schedule instead of just phase 2. Does that make sense?
Not entirely, but maybe.
So what I'm saying is that we have everything ready for phase 1 to start chasing permits. If we turn and add that intersection in there and have that discussion, then that pushes all of phase 1 with it. It drags it all in together. I'm suggesting that we leave it separate so that it can follow its path. And with your direction, we'll find the funding and we'll find the where to make it happen. As far as construction goes and making sure that we don't dig up the same thing twice, we can make that happen as we get further down the road. We can, because we're talking construction in not even putting it out a bid or starting construction till October. And really, through the winter months, it's going to be moving earthwork. And before we start actually getting to hardscape and things like that, the other phase 2 will have caught up. I can see it in my head, and I'm sorry I'm having trouble explaining it to you, but I really think that we can do it and keep things moving along.
Yes, Councilor Elmer.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Stowell, I think that your suggestion is a reasonable one. I don't want this thing to slow down either. Recognizing through this conversation the emphasis on finding the space. It's a space allocation issue so that we're not paying for design in an area that we have to abandon and modify. That's what I want to avoid. That's why having the space allocation now. Now, I think on the telephone, you can tell them what our thoughts are about that corner. Go ahead and do the design, but recognize that that roundabout could get shifted south and that we're going to do this in a second phase immediately. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. I would support that. And how do we get the language so that we have a follow-up that is exactly like that?
It's already, that's why we included the last item in, pursue Windjammer Park improvements beyond the phase 1 components on a separate implementation timeline as funding becomes available.
Okay. And let me just end it on this too. In that southwest corner down there, I think in the bidding process, and we have the bid documents put together, there most certainly should have alternates in this thing that we may have to throw out because of budget constraints coming through the bidding process. Or you may find that the bids come in under, and you may be able to add other things to this project. There's nothing wrong with having the alternates in there. You do it all the time.
We're in a very unique situation with the GCCM because we have the general contractor that can give us an idea of what those costs might be. They may not be exact because we haven't received the bids yet, but they can give us some guidance on what to trim out of the bid packages or what to include.
Was it your perception that we were going to have Corolla design, Hoffman build the kitchens and the other structures in there?
They don't have to, but they could. Now, as far as moving the dirt around and doing the parking lot and the landscaping, that I intended.
The heavy civil, they should do it.
Yes.
I agree with that. And this also something that we should consider is in the pathways that they show on this concept here, it's quite a deviation from our existing pathway. And I've had a few people, people haven't been knocking at my door, but a number of people who have said, why would the city take out the existing pathway? It's closer to the water, and rather than tear all that out and berm it along there and move the pathways in farther away from the water. That's not in this conversation in terms of the 30% design, but certainly in this area D, we may want to reconsider that.
That's a conversation that came up when we were going through the public process, whether we wanted a boardwalk that paralleled the shoreline or if we wanted something that meandered a bit. That's where the natural concept came back and public feedback. We also have an issue with the shoreline having some erosion issues. We've seen what happened to the wind shelters down there. So it does make some sense to keep the pathways a touch back, you know, just to protect our investment.
No, that's for another conversation, but I'm going to be quiet and let somebody else make the motion or define the motion.
Councillor Campbell.
What do we have to do to just include everything that we just talked about? It sounded to me like, according to you, that you listened to the conversation and you said, we can do that. It's not, I mean, it's a big deal, but we can do that. Do we need a motion to put that in this resolution? Or does the resolution continue as it is with no further addition? Engineering knows what we want, so let them go do it.
I just need direction. Point me and I'll go.
Well, that's what I'm asking. How do we do that? Can I tell him, you need to go do what we just told you to do? Or do I need to make a motion to say, let's include the roundabout in phase one?
Well, there's the last sentence is pretty broad, and
Yeah,
and
I
that's,
noticed that. That's why I'm asking the question. Do we go with that or do we need some more?
Yeah. I think the last sentence you have in the resolution listing up there, that gives you enough leeway where staff has a leeway to start pursuing phase two. It talks about those items that are beyond the phase one part.
Okay.
So I think in this resolution, staff has the ability to do that.
So
And we've
we-
heard loud and clear what the message is and what we want to accomplish.
So all we need is a resolution to approve 17.
Yeah, yeah, and I think Joe has done a really good job at trying to lay out, considering
Yeah.
the 12th hour of where we're at on this. I don't think he's trying to jam it up or anything like that. I think he's just trying to throw out some alternatives and things for you to consider. So I think he's done a good job on that. But for us to just be going forward, I think approve this resolution. We have enough leeway in there, and we'll make sure that that phase two that comes along, we start jumping on that and making that work.
And you all know, of course, that if we don't see some sort of plan for the roundabout and the windmill the next time we have the discussion, you better leave town. So all we need is a resolution. All we need is a motion. I make a motion, we approve Resolution 1708.
Second.
So we've got a motion to approve Resolution 1708 and a second motion by Campbell, second by Allenberg. Any more discussion? Input, questions? All in favor, say it.
I'm just going to say I had written out a motion here, Mr. Campbell. I'm going to trust the process. That's all I have to say. Thank you, Mayor.
That's why we've been living with the process for 12 years that I know of. It's always worked. So,
Any other input? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Well, I'll be darned. Unanimous. I never would have guessed that.
although,
Now you can
And
go
one thing.
forward.
Wait a minute, Mr. Campbell.
I just want to say, this is for me, okay? I want the city to know, and I want the staff to know, and I want the council to know that I am still opposed to closing the RV spot for an economic development reason. Thank you, that's all.
Okay, any other final comments? Yes, Councillor Munce?
I move we adjourn.
Second.
To adjourn, motion second. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? We're adjourned.